In this video, I'm sharing simple tips on establishing healthy boundaries with others. Hi everyone, I'm Kiran. Welcome to my channel where I talk about mindfulness, emotional resilience, and spirituality. So I'll start with the personal story. Now, a few months ago, I joined an online business coaching program where part of the deal was that I would attend online sessions followed by one-on-one video calls with the coach, pretty standard. Now, for 1 month, things were great. I felt I was making a lot of progress. I felt supported, and I was happy with the investment I had made. But after 2 months, the coach asked me to join his WhatsApp group so I could communicate with other members in his group. Now, if you know me, I am someone who doesn't like spending too much time on the phone, so I don't quite enjoy WhatsApp groups. And that is exactly what I told him. He responded back saying, okay, I get that you don't enjoy being on phone, but consider sending me a WhatsApp message when you send me an email. Now, when I read his response, I thought about it and I checked in with myself. Is this something I want to say yes to? And for me, at that time, the answer was a no. So I emailed him yet again saying, I'm sorry, but communicating on WhatsApp is not for me. And I thought that would be the end of the story. He emailed me again saying that either I join his WhatsApp group or be ready for my email to get lost in hundreds of emails he gets every day. Now, when I read his response, I thought to myself, clearly I have established a boundary and this person is not respecting that. And do I even want him as my coach? Now, had this incident happened even a few years ago, I would have easily caved in saying, yes, sir, I'll join the group right away. Because I was so much into people pleasing, wanting everyone to like me and being that nice person that I really didn't care what I was saying yes to and if it was even aligned with me. So how did I learn to create boundaries? Well, that's what we will discuss in this video. But before we get there, I want to close this personal story with one thing. Now, you might be wondering, Kiran, what was the big deal about not joining WhatsApp group? And I am so with you. But here's the thing, what is so okay for you may not be okay for another person. And that's the thing about boundaries. There's no black or white way to create them. Like there is no 5-step process that you can follow that will help you establish boundaries. It is something you have to create for yourself. So let's start with what are boundaries. Now, when you look at your physical body, you see the outer edge, you see the boundary of your physical body, and it's pretty clear. Let's take a look at the circular object. The rim tells me where the boundary is. So the physical boundary in both these examples is something you can clearly see. But what about emotional boundaries and mental boundaries? If I draw a person, now while I can see this person's physical boundaries, the emotional and mental boundaries are invisible. So again, the physical boundary is visible and emotional and mental boundary is invisible. Now, the only way for me to know this person's emotional boundaries is if this person were to communicate those boundaries to me. And if he didn't open his mouth, he didn't say a word, I will probably assume that he has no issues with whatever request I am making because clearly I don't know any better. Now, if you were to take this analogy and apply it to your life, how many times do you clearly communicate your boundaries with others? Hardly ever, right? And then you end up resenting other people, saying they walk all over you, when the reality is that it is your responsibility to communicate. And no one can do that for you because no one can swim inside your head and find out what you like and what you don't like. So going back to the example I shared earlier in the video with the business coach, so let's say this was my boundary. And what this coach was doing was constantly attempting to weaken this boundary. But when I reaffirmed that this boundary stays as is, he retreated. Now, here's the thing, right now I can calmly talk about this experience, but when my boundaries are not respected, I'm not this calm. I feel angry, frustrated, anxious, and even afraid. Like we all wonder, like what just happened, right? And part of the reason why so many of us struggle in establishing boundaries is because one, no one showed us or taught us what it means to have healthy boundaries. Other times we just assume that shouldn't other people know what's right and what's not right? As in, we make assumptions about other people. And then perhaps the biggest reason why we struggle in setting boundaries is because we ourselves don't know what those boundaries are. So think of your boundaries like a house fence. Say this is your house and you put a fence around this house so that other people know that it's your property and they can't barge in. Similarly, you need to put a fence for your emotions. Remember this picture I showed you earlier in the video where we said the physical boundary is visible whereas the emotional boundary is invisible. So setting boundaries is like putting a fence for your emotions. Because when you don't have this fence, other people don't know what is acceptable to you and what's not. And further, you yourself will find it challenging to say no to other people. So then how do we create this emotional fence? Like I shared before, there is no magic formula that I could share with you that will help you establish healthy boundaries. But I can share a few guidelines. Now here's the thing, our emotions are not black or white. There's a whole range of color between them. What you feel for your spouse may be very different from how you feel for your kids or even your work colleagues. And so your emotional boundaries are going to be different for all of them. Maybe for your spouse, your boundary looks something like this. And for your kids, that boundary looks something like this. And then for someone at work, perhaps this is what that boundary looks like. And the only person who can decide how much you want to let someone else in to your personal space is you. Only you can decide where this fence goes in each and every relationship. Now, one simple way to get started in establishing boundaries is that start paying attention to your feelings. So let's say you struggle in creating boundaries with your sibling. Next time you're having an interaction or a conversation with them, check in with yourself. How do I feel? I know it sounds so simple and yet we rarely do this exercise. Think of your feelings as a signpost to guide you where to draw a boundary. Say you're having a conversation with your sibling about a topic, and as you tune in, you feel that the conversation feels right, it feels easy. In that case, for that topic, you can have flexible boundaries. On the other hand, if the conversation feels rigid, it feels constricted, that's a sign right there that perhaps you need to have firm boundaries on that topic. The $1 billion advice I could give you is make your feelings your best friend. Trust them implicitly without any judgment because they will help you, guide you in establishing boundaries with people. So when I was first learning to establish boundaries, what I started doing was that anytime someone asked me to do something, instead of immediately saying yes, I started saying, let me get back to you in 2-3 days. And then over the course of next 2 days, I would ask myself, do I really want to say yes to this request? Like, is it an authentic yes, or am I saying yes out of obligation? Because for the most part, we want to say yes to something because we want to, not because we have to, or we should. Because should and have to are the enemies of creating healthy boundaries. And obviously in this example, I'm not talking about the daily chores that we all have to do regardless of whether we like them or not. Now, other times, when someone asked me to do something and I would check in with myself and I got neither a yes nor no. In those situations, what I did was I would ask myself, am I in consent with what this person is asking me to do? And I would let that answer be my guide. As I was doing research for this video, it dawned on me that perhaps the cornerstone of establishing healthy boundaries is staying true to yourself. In other words, the more authentic you are to yourself, the easier it will be to establish boundaries. And in this context of this video and this topic, being authentic means being authentic to how you are feeling, acknowledging it, and not overriding with your logic. Like not saying, I shouldn't be feeling this way or I shouldn't be thinking that way, but just being honest with yourself that this is where I am in this moment. And finally, one thing I must emphasize is that learning to establish boundaries is a process. If you have been saying yes to everyone and everything all your life, then you shouldn't expect that tomorrow you will wake up and have healthy boundaries. So please have a lot of compassion and patience with yourself, because eventually you're going to get to a point where you will see that you can be nice and also have firm boundaries with others, that these two are not mutually exclusive. Now, in the description below, I've put a link to an excellent article on establishing boundaries, so feel free to check that out. I hope these suggestions were helpful. As always, please only take what resonates, discard the rest. Thank you so much for your time today. I will see you next Tuesday with a new video. And until then, have a beautiful rest of the week.